Welcome to the Databricks Skill Builder series. We're glad you're here.
I have slides and I have several different demos, which we're going to walk through. We're talking about something called ipywidgets and bamboolib. Both of these are available within an interactive notebook experience and really aids in exploratory data analysis. And we'll go through that. We'll go through all of that and why it's useful. But first, I want to do two shameless plugs. Every quarter, we host a customer webinar to review our future product roadmap. So you know exactly what's coming out and when that is committed on the roadmap. And you can, see what great features and what we're thinking about. It's delivered by our product managers. So there's a lot of technical information there, and there is live Q&A. So these are coming up next week. There is a link here. If you just go to databricks.com or search for product roadmap webinar, you'll find it, or just ask your account team if you haven't already gotten the invite. The second thing is yesterday, we had a webinar on Unity Catalog. And I bring this up because this is GAing now. And so you'll have the opportunity to upgrade to it. It gives you all new capabilities on centralizing governance, data lineage, auditability, data sharing. It's our path to the future. So if you missed the webinar, a recording is available on demand. And the link is here. And again, your account team can give that link to you if you need it. We could also, the recording of this will be available, so you'll see it as well. Okay, so with ipywidgets and bamboolib, we're really talking about the developer experience. So it's not, one of these foundational layers. It's this extra tooling available to you within the notebooks, starting with Databricks Runtime 11.0 and above. It is in what we would call a public preview state. So you should be able to access it with no problem as long as you have that runtime. So let's start with ipywidgets. These are interactive HTML widgets that are built on the Jupyter Notebook ecosystem. This isn't something that Databricks invented, right? Jupyter Notebooks have been out there. There's an IPython kernel, and ipywidgets run on top of that and gives you this rich interactive ability to not just, analyze code, but to collect user input to drive that flow. And let me explain what I mean by that. In Databricks right now, in legacy Databricks, you have some very simple widgets. It's usually just a text box or a drop down where you can maybe set the year or set the storage location, and then the code runs from there. With ipywidgets, we're talking about more than that. We're talking about sliders and progress bars and toggle buttons and checkboxes and date pickers, and this ability to lay them out in a grid, just like if you think about designing an HTML web page, to create a style and create new interactive experiences. For instance, this particular one was written with ipywidgets. So you've got a checkbox, you've got a slider, you've got two drop downs, and the results of this affect how the graph looks. And this is available in the notebook. So we're going to actually jump into this right now, and I'll show you some of the different options that are available and how that code gets written. So let's jump over to where ipywidgets demo. There we are. Nope. I can't see there. Okay. So we're in a notebook now. And I can make these notebooks available if people want them. I am connected to a cluster that is running Databricks 11.0. And there are samples out there. Most of this code I just lifted from different people's web pages. There's the ipywidgets read the docs. This is the GitHub for Jupyter Widgets. Databricks has docs, and then there's samples all over. So the first thing you do is you import ipywidgets, And this is kind of cool. It's going to use 2 sliders. And based on the sliders, you're going to hear a beat frequency. I don't know if you'll be able to hear this. And then if I move the slider, I hope you can hear that difference, but it's basically 2 different sliders. And so what you're doing is you've imported this thing called interactive. You've imported audio and display, and you've got your logic. And then you're just calling this audio widget with the data you've provided. And so here it is, V equals interactive, which makes these interactive and affects the output here. Let's take a look at another one, an image browser. So we're going to use the, let's just run it so you can see it. So here what we're doing is we have a directory of images that came in from scikit-learn. There's data sets and there's images, and we're just going to cycle through them. So depending on what the value of the slider is, we're going to see a different image. So we can move through a directory of images, just by doing this in the notebook. We have progress bars. And so you can programmatically, set a progress bar like this and make it go back and forth. And you can, with different steps, you have toggle buttons. So, where a user can click, and then based on the value, it'll change color or something will happen. You can have check boxes, like that. You can have drop downs where you display text, but also then each one creates a value. So here's my drop down. Now I'm going to change the value to 3. And notice here I gave the widget, I assigned it to a parameter or to a variable, and then said display I. Well, now I has the value here. So if I call I.value, I will get back the value. So now you could set up a whole page of widgets where people are putting in information, and then you can get the value from each of those and have that drive something programmatically. Same thing with pizza toppings. You can start building really rich applications, and I'm going to show you some of that in a second. So here's another slider. Let's see, I like my eggs poached. No, I like them over easy. Okay, so let's take a look at how you might use this to, create an interactive scatter plot. So in every Databricks workspace, we provide some default data sets. So I'm just looking at the bike sharing data set. I'm going to convert it to a pandas data frame. And then we're going to create a plot, and interactively, depending on what we provide, the plot is going to change. Whoops, I should have done that before. Give it a second. Okay, so there's our data set. And here is the widget. So now, depending on what we're going to map, here we're mapping temp. If we map humidity, we get a different one. And this is the fit line. If I remove that, if I unclick that, the fit goes away. So we can see fit equals true, column equals temp, and we're calling this function, and we're interacting with the widget. We're making it respond to the changes. We also have, this one is what I showed in the slide. I will show how to build that. So this one, we're gonna walk through how you build that. Shoot, my Zoom controls are in the way of getting to my tabs. There they are. Okay. So in this one, this came from Plotly. We're going to read in the NYC flights CSV and list the unique carriers. So we can see the data. We've got different carriers, different origins, different dates. So we're going to create an integer slider, which is going to be the month, and it's going to be from 1 to 12. We're going to have a checkbox slider, which is basically going to say whether or not to use the month. So it's going to be, do you want to use the date, or do you just want the full access for all the data? Then we're going to tile those, the checkbox and the int slider, into a horizontal box. So it's going to be one to the left and one to the right. So we're creating a container that is both of those. So that is this little date button here and the month. So that's a container that we just created. Then we're creating a drop down so you can select the airline. Then we're creating a drop down so you can select the origin airport. And then we're going to work on how you create the graph. So let's just create these definitions. And then, as this is when you adjust your inputs, what do you want to have happen? So we'll just run that. And then finally, display it. So we're going to display our different tiles and our different boxes. And here it comes as it renders. So we've got our date. We're seeing everything. We can pick a particular month. We can change the airline, and we've made this fully interactive now in the workbook. It does take knowing how to write Python to do this, but we've made some very interesting displays. You have some great options for layouts. We looked at the horizontal box already. So we can have horizontal tiling. You can have vertical tiling, which is VBox. And you can lay them out in a grid. So you can, there's a layout option, there's a grid template, and you can decide, what you want. And these don't have to be the same thing. You can have a checkbox and a slider and a chart. It can all be fit. The thing called accordion is the ability to have each one in its own little collapsible portion. And similarly, you can create tabs. So you can start to think about guiding a user through a workflow, do everything on this page, then do everything on this tab, then do everything on that tab, and have a guided workflow. So for instance, I was working on a side project on entity resolution where you're trying to decide whether certain records are identical. And so you need a human in the loop to say, are these two patients the same? Are these two customers the same? Based on name and address and demographics or something, as you're trying to resolve these entities. So I tried to play with widgets to see what would a human workflow look like to do that. And let's render and see what I wound up doing. So I'm presenting a data frame to a subject matter expert and saying, are these two people the same? And I'm going to say, yes, they're the same. Are these two the same? No. Are these two the same? No. Are these two the same? No. Are these two the same? I'm not actually sure. I created a button here, and I put in my own little icon to review the labels, and it's telling me what I've currently set it to. If I change a label and hit that again, I'll see that change, and then I can click I'm done. Once I'm done labeling, I want to add these labels to my data frame. And so now I've created a labeled data frame, and I can go on from there. This becomes really useful. Sometimes in machine learning, you have to have a human doing some labeling before you can fine-tune your model. So I built a little experience just playing around with the widgets. This becomes useful for my use case. You can also do all sorts of media imports. So there's video and audio. Here, we're just loading a video from the web. You can load images from DBFS or from any storage or from any URL. You can play audio from a URL. I don't know if you'll hear it.
What's cooking, Doc?
And you can, there's even a widget to read in from YouTube. So hopefully you get the idea. There's a lot you can do with widgets if you're trying to build an interesting interactive user experience in a notebook. Okay, from this, I'm going to now jump back into the presentation and we're going to look at bamboolib. So bamboolib is an open source, low code, no code GUI for pandas. And so it's through the use of widgets, it's enabling you to do visual data wrangling within your notebook without needing to Google Python or Pandas syntax. You're simply looking up transformations, in a dropdown. You're, whether it's changing a variable type or grouping by or aggregating any number of different transformations, but you're doing this all visually without writing code. Same thing with creating plots based on that. There's two great things about this. One, if you know how to do data science and you know R or SAS or something else, but you don't know Python and Pandas, not only will this help you, this will generate the code. So after you've done 10 steps visually, it will generate the code, and now you can capture that code and reuse it and version control it. And this is a quick on-ramp for people needing to learn Python and Pandas. And then you have people who will never write code, but they want to be able to use the data. And here you can do this too. You can have the people who do know how to write code set up the framework for them. The other piece about bamboolib, which is awesome, is it's completely extensible. So you can write your own plugins, you can write custom transformations, you can write custom chart templates. So that's going to be the third piece of our presentation. But first I want to go into bamboolib. So first of all, bamboolib, as I said, it started as open source. It still is. It'll run in Jupyter Notebooks, but it's also the company that created it, Databricks, purchased almost a year ago. And so this is now fully integrated into our notebooks as of Databricks Runtime 11.0. So when you want to analyze a data frame, if you invoke bamboolib, a whole new visual experience will pop up for you that will allow you to manipulate the data frame and use it and generate Python Pandas code. And again, the code is reusable, and it is a quick on-ramp for those who have never coded in Python or Pandas. The types of, now I shamelessly stole the next few slides from my colleague Haley Horn. So Haley, shout out to you. So it supports data transformations, string transformations, date time, visualizations, even some predictors. It does some great data profiling. And as I said, if the transformation you're looking for isn't there, you can write it and have it appear in the same drop-down boxes. And we'll show you how to do that. This is a laundry list of all the transformations that are currently available. Again, you can write your own. So like a string transformation, uppercase, lowercase, trim the white space, etc. Split on spaces or split on numerics. Lots of rich abilities to manipulate date and time. It has plot creators, so you can do all sorts of different plots and set colors, set axes, and it's generating code that you can reuse. It has predictors. It can look at correlations between different variables, bivariate plots, a number of other things. You can, in the end, basically, as you do each transformation, you're generating a recipe of things that you've done to this, and you can go back and undo different steps and remove transformations. And as I said, you're slowly building out Python Pandas code. that can be reusable. And yeah, you can export the code. So let's go run to this demo. Just looking at the time, we're doing great. Okay, let me just come up here and go to demo bamboolib. Okay, we are on the same cluster. This notebook also shamelessly stolen from Haley with some modifications from me. So the first thing to run in bamboolib is, again, you want to be on an 11.0 cluster. And it's not actually in the runtime. You do need to pip install it.
Hey, Mimi, can I
Yeah.
just interject real quick? There is a question that's asking.
Yeah.
The features in ipywidget match what is also available on Jupyter Notebook.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, basically I'm showing you that ipywidgets will run in a Databricks notebook because Databricks has adopted now that kernel. So what you would have run in those notebooks, you can now run here.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah. So we've pip installed bamboolib, and the first thing we're going to do is we're going to try to just load data, and we'll show some different things. So when you first start bamboolib, you've pip installed it. Now you're going to import it, and then you start it. You're going to have options of where do you want your data to come from. And so you can load it, from DBFS, you can load a table, you can load some dummy data that they provide, or you can just use an existing data frame. So we'll go through those different options. So first, we're going to load from DBFS, and we're going to load one of the default data sets. So I'm going to import bamboolib, and then I'm going to start it. So give it a second. It will render, and then we'll get to that data set. Just a second. There we go. So it brought up 3 widgets. It says read from DBFS, load a Databricks, loaded database table, or load dummy data. So let's do this one first. And it's going to bring up a DBFS Explorer. I don't want to be in file store. I want to go up a level and then go down to Databricks data sets. These should be all in your workspace. Databricks data sets. Then I'm going to go to our data sets. I don't know where this labeling came up with, but this is what it is. And ggplot2 and diamonds. There it is. I tell it the separator, etc., and we open the file. Okay, so here we can see the code it just created. It was basically a one-liner, but if you don't know Python or Pandas, you wouldn't necessarily know the right syntax, and you'd be Googling it to try it. So it's just been generated for you. And now we see our data frame. So here we see some actions we can do. And there's a long list of actions. And if you don't see the action you want, you can write it and have it appear in this list. So let's drop a column. I want to drop, and I'm going to pick a column. I'm going to drop that first index column. So we'll drop that. What happened? I hit something wrong. Okay, always interesting. Let's run this again. I don't know if my cursor went somewhere it shouldn't have, but I did something. Let's go back to our love live demos. DBFS, Databricks datasets. There. Our datasets, data 00, CSV, ggplot, and diamonds. Okay, open. Okay, so let's drop that column. We're going to drop. We're going to choose unnamed 0 and execute. Okay, so that was done. And the price right now is listed as an integer. But if we ever wanted to do some ML on this to predict price, we should probably make that a float. So let's convert price to float. So I think there is a convert. Let's see, or is it to float? There it is. I want to convert price to float. And we'll just allow it to be renamed. So we'll execute that. And if you notice down here, it is generating the pandas as we go along. So now the other thing we see here is we can create plots from this. So let's look at creating a histogram for the color distribution. We can choose histogram, and the x-axis, let's make the x-axis color. And there it is. We can see the color distribution. And this too generated code that we can have. I can go back to this tab to see the table. And there's this other button here called Explore Data Frame. And this is showing us, it's profiling the data frame for us. And we can click into any of these and see more results. It also can generate the bivariate plots to look at, what predicts what, or how tightly things are correlated. And you can look at predictors as well. So all of this is available in that basic interface for any data frame you feed it. So what we explored here was just loading a CSV. We can also load data from a table. So if I invoke bamboolib again, we're just going to click on this button now, load database from table. And we're going to find Mimikyu wine. There it is. And we're going to grab this table and execute. Maybe not. There we go. And we can create a plot of, what did I say? I was going to create a plot of a histogram of acidity and color. So I think x-axis is fixed acidity. And I think color is going to be red. There we go. And we can see the plot code here. And we've just created a nice histogram of the different wines in our samples. Okay. We can also load dummy data. So again, I'll start BAM, bring up the widget. And dummy data, they provide you with different data sets here. So there's the Titanic passenger data set, which is like the starter data set for everybody on Kaggle. There's also a sales data set and Titanic ports. Let's look at the sales data set. And what can we see? We can see regions, countries, types, number of things you might want to do. But let's say we want to drop, what did I pick? I picked drop columns. I don't want to drop columns. I want to filter rows. And I only want to see rows where item type is baby food. I want to filter out everything else because I'm only interested in baby food. There, I've just done that. And now I can see the pandas code for that. And then finally, we can do this with any data frame. We don't have to, once bamboolib is activated, we only have to provide a data frame of anything we want. So I'm going to read in the Titanic data set. Let's see. Oh, I'm not, no, sorry. I was going to show you some analysis with the Titanic data set. That's where we are right now. Okay, so we're going to load BAM again. And we're going to load the dummy data for Titanic. And we're going to do a number of things. I've got my cheat sheets up here. So first, what do I want to do? I want to make a bar plot showing survivorship by cabin, age, color, and gender. So let's see if we can figure that out. So we're going to create a plot. It's going to be a bar plot. We want the x-axis to be cabin. Okay, we want the y-axis to be age. We want color to represent those who survived. And we would like to facet this, facet column on gender. And what did I not do? Let's see, cabin. So age, survived. I did something wrong because I'm not seeing the data. Where is it? There's my data. There's my plot creator. I don't know. Let's see. This is what I should get in the code. PX bar DF Titanic cabin age. I think I've got it wrong. Yeah, I did it wrong. X-axis is cabin. There we go. X-axis is cabin. Y-axis is age. Okay, I've got to add a property. Y-axis is age. There we go. Okay. So I can see a few things from this. One, I can see that females survived a lot more than males did. Now, right now, my cabins all have, you know, the cabin, like I guess it's like the tier, the floor level, as well as the room number, and they're not ordered very well. So I might first want to order them, might want to sort x-axis category order, ascend alphabetically, see if that changes anything. Okay, we're still, but it would be nice if we could group like everybody in the E class together, everybody in D class together. So we can create a second plot. But first we have to split cabin so that we only get that first letter. So that's what we're going to do next. We're going to go back to data and we're going to split and create a new column that is just this first letter category. And then we'll do our plot again. So we'll go back to data. We're going to drop any missing values. So I think it's missing data. Drop missing values in cabin. So if we don't have the cabin information, we're not going to use that row. Okay. And then we want to split cabin. So that's another predefined transform. Split text column, cabin. And we want to split it. If there's a number, we want to split it on the number. We only want that first character. And it's a regular expression. And let's, do the first three. Let's see what happens. So what we got was, here's the cabin. And I have, I'm just taking the alpha. And so this is the one we want to use. We want to use this in our new plot. So let's create a plot again. We'll create a second plot. And this will be, let's make it a scatter plot where the x-axis is that cabin 0. And let's see, y-axis can be age. And we'll facet this on gender. let's see, facet row on gender. And we're going to add the color to be whether they survived. And we're going to add one more this time. The mark size is going to be based on the fare they paid. There we go. So now we can see, some stuff a little bit better. These weren't sorted, but we can see, again, predominantly the women survived. And the men didn't, especially if they were in the C tier of cabins. So we're able to do all this without writing code, but the code is generated for us. So if we wanted to do this again and repeat it, we can capture all the code, copy it into a cell, and version control it. Okay, and then again, you can just have your own data frame, and when you just try to invoke that data frame, it will invoke DF. So this was the fourth way to load data. So we created a data frame, and now I have the option to show the bamboolib UI right here. And now I can play with my data frame. So that's the basics of bamboolib. I think I'm going to stop there if there's any questions before I jump into plugins. Any questions? Okay, I'm going to jump over to plugins now. So if you remember, right, we did a couple of different things here. For instance, when we went to create plot, we said, what kind of plot? Well, what if there's a different plot that we want to do? We could code that and add it to the list. What if we're trying to load, a different type of data than what was in the data picker, or we want to provide a curated set of tables that we want people to be able to choose? We can create a different kind of loader. So we're going to walk through two of those examples. Now, creating that kind of tailored experience does require you to be able to code in Python. But one person with the knowledge of being able to code in Python can create this template so that other people who don't know how to code have a much easier experience. It also helps you create these custom user analytics experiences, maybe for certain teams. So let's take a look at that. And I honestly think this is one of the biggest advantages within bamboolib, is this fact that it's extensible. So that those who can and do code, their efforts scale out to others now. So this is an example. It is Python, it is, object-oriented. But if you remember, when we loaded data, we had a choice of read CSV, read from DBFS, or read in dummy data. So this example is creating a fourth option, and in this case, it's loading stock ticker data. So if we look at the code, first of all, it's adding a button. And when you click that button, it's going to bring up an interactive form. And then once you fill it in, it will generate your data frame and allow you to explore. So let's see what they did. They imported widgets, and then bamboolib plugins. They're importing the loader plugin, something called data frame new, and something called multi-select. The multi-select is what's going to create this box right here, where you're going to see a drop down with a bunch of different tickers, and you're picking which ones you want. So that's what this is here. It says init plugin. It's creating something called tickers input, and it's creating a multi-select with a bunch of different tickers that you can pick from. It then renders, it has a title, load ticker data, and it sets the content. It says load data for ticker, which is right here, this title. It renders this thing called tickers input, which we defined right here, which is a multi-select thing, which brings up a widget. And it has an execute button. And when it executes, it calls this function load ticker with the ticker names. It reads in the file, and it filters the data. So I actually have an example of this, and we'll walk through it together. So this is one example of a loader plugin. This one is a figure plugin. So remember, there was that tab that said plot creator, and we went through histogram and scatter plot or bar plot. Well, you can create a custom plot, which has a number of things already preset, and maybe just a few things you want people to play with. So you can create like a team standard chart, but just give them the ability to set certain things depending on what you want to do. So in this case, plot creator has a bunch of different methods, or I don't know the right terminology here, but you set your x-axis and you allow it to possibly be the sort column. You set a y-axis with multiple columns if you want. You give them the option to set the color for the graph. And then you render this, so you get your x-axis, y-axis, color, and then you also add on these built-ins, which say show a date slider and show a date range selector, which is this piece up here. So we'll walk through how this works, and we'll walk through a couple other plugins as well. So again, this does take somebody who knows Python, but in doing this, you can start standardizing and rolling out workflows that enable many more analysts who don't necessarily know how to do the coding. So let me go to that demo, which is demo plugins here. All right. The one caveat I will say is that a lot of the plugins and capabilities I don't feel are well documented. Tobias has a GitHub that has a bunch of these examples in it. And other than that, if you really want to do customized plugins, I would ask you to contact us. And we'll be working on that documentation and additional samples coming up. So what we're going to do, we're going to play with a data set on COVID hospitalization. So if we just take a quick look at it. So notice I'm still on my 11.0 cluster. It's a new workbook though, so I haven't pip installed bamboolib yet. So it's just the regular pandas display, but it's telling me you could be using bamboolib if you want. Here's how to do it. And if I click this button, it'll tell me how to start bamboolib, but we'll do that. So this is the COVID data set. It has lots of different countries represented and daily metrics for different indicators: daily ICU occupancy, occupancy per million, hospital occupancy, weekly new, whatever. So I think there's like 10 different indicators, each with a daily value across probably 20 different countries. That's the nature of this data set. So we're going to pip install bamboolib. And then import bamboolib, and then bam. Okay, so remember, we just have these three loaders, but we want to load this data set from here. That does not conveniently fit into any of these three options. So we want a new option. So we're going to create a new loader that ingests that particular COVID data. And in the configuration box that's going to pop up, we want you to pre-select which countries you want and one specific indicator. So we're going to do a multi-select for country and a single select on the indicators. So here's the multi-select, and I just typed in a few of the countries, and single select. So the user will be able to pick from these. And then the data frame that gets read into bamboolib will be a subset. So you can pre-filter. So we're importing loader plugin, multi-select and single select. Here is the code. We're going to generate a multi-select, generate a single select. We're going to render those. And when we click execute, it's going to return a data frame that is equal to this function, load COVID data, with the country input value, which is this, whatever got selected, and the indicator input value, which is whatever got selected here. And this load COVID function is something I defined up here. So we're going to read in our COVID, we're going to filter it for countries, and we're going to filter it for the given indicator. So let's try this again. We're going to run that. So now let's call bamboolib again and see how that changed. So we've got our fourth button. With any luck, when I click it, something beautiful will happen. There we go. Now I get to pick countries. And I'm going to pick daily hospital occupancy per million. And I'm going to call it DF-OC. There we go. So we've got daily hospital occupancy. We've got a value. So that was a loader plugin. And we can see the code that got generated. Now, let's say I want to do a transform that says, take all the data for Australia and tell me the delta from one day to the next of how the admissions change, how the occupancy changed. So it's a difference from one day to the next grouped by country. That is not an action. That type of diff isn't in here, so I need to create it. Whoops, I don't know what happened there, but so that calls for a transform plugin, and I'll wrap this up after the transform plugin. So I'm going to create a new plugin called diff within groups, and what it's going to do is it's going to sequence your data, allow you to group your and select a group by column. And then it's going to calculate a diff based on the value. So I've just run the code to create this. Now when I run this again, MQ load COVID data. Oh, you know what? I don't even need to, well, I didn't need to do that, but I'll do it quickly here. And we'll go daily hospital occupancy per million, DF-OC. Okay, so now I should be able to see diff within groups. There it is. That's the transform I just created. I'm going to choose a group by column, which is entity. And I'm going to calculate a diff of value. And now I can see the diff. It ordered it by date. And I can see the plus minus diff within each country. So I created a new transform. I'm going to skip the visualization. We're going to go to the figure plugin. And remember, we want to create a custom graph. So in this case, we're going to create this new graph that allows us to look at our COVID data. And we're going to create a new type of plot called line plot for COVID. So now if I just call that same DF occupancy data frame that I created up here, I should just be able to see that option. Let's see, show the UI. And then I want to create a plot. And now if I scroll down, line plot for COVID analysis, there we go. Now we can fill this in. So x-axis should be date. Y-axis should be value. Color equals entity. Show the range slide. There we go. So now we can see we've created a chart very easily just by filling in a few things. I do have a date slider present, which allows me to do this sort of thing. And I do have the ability to have a date picker as well. So these are the sorts of things that you can do, and you can start creating these customized experiences for your team. If plugins is something that you're interested in, please contact us and we can help you through it. We are working on the documentation. That is, I believe, the end of my presentation. Let me just see if I had any final slides. Oh, I did have one final slide. Let me just share my screen again. Okay, so resources. I showed a lot of links, both in the notebooks and in the slides. I've gathered them up here.
Can you copy those and then paste them into the chat?
I probably could. That'd be great. Love technology. There you go. Did that all come through? I hope.
Yes, but it only came through to the hosts and panelists. Can you try it again and change
my mistake. Thank you.
No worries.
There we go.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Mimi. This was a great
Sure.
presentation. I had no idea I could do so many cool things with widgets inside of Databricks. I'm excited to work on this on my own as well as share with my customers. So thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you.
And everybody, appreciate your participation. Go ahead.
No, just asking if there's any outstanding questions.
I just have comments, great job, those kinds of things, no actual real questions.
Okay, great.
Thank you. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.